So if you're dealing with sarcopenia or age-related muscle loss, in this video I'm going to share some studies, and I'll have links to all these studies in the description below that'll kind of help you understand why this situation comes about, why the standard suggestions are usually not enough, and some steps you can take to really turn this around. So the most common things you hear when people are having muscle loss type issues, especially as they're aging, is they will say, well, you need to do resistance training and you need to make sure that you have enough protein intake. And the resistance training really is important. This is what kind of triggers those muscles to rebuild and repair. So really just kind of sitting around on your couch is a great way for the body to say, oh, I guess I don't really need all of this muscle. It can be a little bit metabolically expensive to keep it going. So I'm just kind of break this down and we'll get rid of it since we're not using it a lot. So the resistance training really is the trigger that can springboard the repairs to take place. And the protein intake can be important. Let's look at this study here on low protein intake is associated with frailty in older adults. And they say an inadequate protein intake leads to lower protein synthesis rates, resulting in net protein breakdown and muscle catabolism. And that catabolism is just the phase of the body when it breaks down tissues. It wants to do that anyways so that it can rebuild and renew them. But when we're not having enough protein intake, it can do that even more. So to understand why that happens, we really want to look at amino acid access. That's really what this whole problem can be about for a lot of people. So let's look at this study here on signatures and clinical significance of amino acid flux in sarcopenia. And they said that we found that concentrations of branched chain amino acid leucine, isoleucine, and aromatic amino acid tryptophan were significantly reduced in individuals with sarcopenia. So what we need to understand is that the body can't use protein to rebuild muscle. You can't just take chicken and rebuild a muscle with that. That chicken, or whatever protein that is, has to be broken down into amino acids and all of those amino acid cofactors that go along with them, so the body can use those as the building blocks to rebuild muscle tissue. So if we're not breaking that protein down into those amino acids so that we have the building blocks, we can't rebuild and repair tissue. To make things even worse, the body uses amino acids for a lot of functions in the body. It needs access to these amino acids. And if it doesn't have access to these amino acids, it's going to get them anyways. It's going to shop at the 7-Eleven. And that 7-Eleven is you. It's going to break down your own muscle tissues to access the nutrients that it needs. Let's look at this study here on amino acid supplementation. And they said if an inadequate amount of essential amino acid precursors are available from dietary intake to meet the demand throughout the body, the breakdown of muscle protein and release of amino acids into the blood will provide the necessary essential amino acids. So when your body's not getting it, it breaks you down so that it can get it. So that can really magnify the decrease in muscle mass in the body if the body's not really getting what it needs. So let's understand why the body might not be getting these amino acids if you are consuming enough protein. Let's look at this study here on association between proton pump inhibitor use and muscle mass. And they say longer duration of PPI use appears to be associated with greater likelihood of muscle mass decline. So a PPI, or proton pump inhibitor, is an acid reflux medication that a lot of people use to turn off that stomach acid production so that that acid doesn't come back up and burn them. So in this study, they're showing that there's a decrease in muscle mass when people use these too long, and that's because we need that stomach acid to break down protein. The acidic environment in the stomach is what triggers that pepsin enzyme to help us break down proteins. And the acidity is how we break that protein down. So when we're turning off that stomach acid, we're turning off the body's ability to access the amino acids in the protein that we're consuming. Here's the problem. You don't need to be taking a PPI to have low stomach acid. A lot of people have low stomach acid for a wide variety of reasons. Even if a person is just stressed, that can restrict the body's ability to produce this stomach acid. A lot of people feel like as we age, we reduce the ability to produce that stomach acid. Now, I've shown studies and videos before that shows that that's not actually true, but the way that I view it is The longer a person is alive, the more opportunities they have for things to go wrong that create malfunctions in this digestive process. So it's very common as we age to see lower levels of stomach acid for a wide variety of reasons. But if that stomach acid is low, it's just like we're taking a PPI that would turn it off, and this study shows that when we do that and we don't have enough stomach acid, then we can create this lack of amino acids. So this low stomach acid issue is called hypochlorhydria. And not only is that a big deal when it comes to accessing these amino acids in the proteins that we're consuming, but a wide variety of digestive issues have the ability to restrict our ability to get the nutrients out of the food that we're eating. Let's look at this study here on age-related sarcopenia and the gut microbiome. And they say the current literature suggests that modification of the microbiome through exercise and nutritional interventions may be used as interventions for sarcopenia management and prevention. So they were talking about how when that microbiome is off, that can restrict the ability for us to get all of the nutrients out of the food that we're eating. We don't need just amino acids. We need a lot of nutrients for the body to operate and for the body not to say, I'm not getting what I need, so I'm going to break down these tissues to get what I need. So we want the digestive process working correctly. Now, another problem when we're having trouble rebuilding or repairing muscle correctly, let's look at this study here on hypercatabolic syndrome. And they say all these conditions have predominant catabolic molecules with significant muscle wasting and metabolic impairment. And this is a situation, this hypercatabolic situation is something that we see a lot when we're looking at this muscle wasting kind of disease issues, where it's more of an extreme case of a person losing muscle. But what we need to understand is that this hypercatabolic syndrome they were talking about in this study can also happen on a lower level. It was Dr. Emmanuel Revisi who helped us understand that the body has this natural circadian rhythm at the cellular level. So during the day we're in this more of a catabolic state where the body is breaking itself down more and kind of keeping us energized all day, and then at night we move into this anabolic state where it's very good at resting but also rebuilding and repairing. So both of those states are great. The problem is some people can get stuck in one of these states most of the time, and that can create a wide variety of health issues if they're stuck in either of those states. So if someone is really stuck in this catabolic state and they're not moving into the anabolic state, then they don't have the ability to rebuild and repair those muscle tissues. So what we're seeing is that the body really needs access to the tools that it needs to rebuild and repair these muscles, but the body also needs to be able to move into the state where it's very good at rebuilding and repairing. So either of those malfunctions is going to restrict the body's ability to have that muscle going on, and it also might turn into a situation where it's breaking down that muscle even more, like we talked about. So when we're looking at the 4 steps that are important to really reverse this situation, yes, the resistance training is very important. That's number 1. We need to make sure that we're bringing in enough protein. And most people that are not bringing in enough protein usually are doing this because they feel lousy when they eat protein. If we don't have enough stomach acid to break that protein down, it'll sit there like a rock for 6 hours and the person just feels lousy. They're like, I ain't eating that again. I'll just eat some of these toaster pastries. I feel better when I eat that. And they'll just gravitate more towards these processed foods or carbohydrates, and they'll avoid this protein. So protein intake is important, but usually there's digestive malfunctions going on if somebody's really avoiding that protein. So step number 3 becomes to fix any digestive malfunctions, whether it's a low stomach acid issue and that hypochlorhydria, or some type of dysbiosis in the gut that needs to be repaired. So if you don't know how to do those things, we'll have a link in the description below for our video on full digestive reset, and that'll kind of walk you through figuring out which aspects of digestion are not working correctly and steps you can take to really repair those. So step number 3 is really important. If we're not breaking those foods down to get the nutrients, it doesn't matter whether we're eating them or not. And then step number 4 is if a person has a catabolic imbalance, they would want to repair that. And we'll have a link in the description below for our video on understanding a catabolic imbalance that kind of helps you understand how to figure out if that's an issue for you and steps you can take to improve that situation. But let's also talk about some supplements that can give you a little bit of a boost and help you get some improvement as you're correcting these other issues. So supplementing with some amino acids can be beneficial, but it's not usually going to help in the long term. The body needs more than just amino acids. It needs all the cofactors that go with that. which are the things we get out of the food that we're eating, which is why we want to digest our food correctly. Here's some studies, I'll put links below, that show that, whey protein and resistance training together help a lot. And that seems to be because the whey protein is higher in that leucine amino acid that is very efficient at helping the body rebuild and repair muscle. I used to not use whey protein much because I thought it was estrogenic, but I've been seeing some studies that show that that may not really be the case, so that may be a beneficial thing. Betaine HCl capsules can be very beneficial if you're having a low stomach acid issue. I'll put a link in the description below for a study that shows that we can use Betaine HCl capsules when the body is not making enough HCl on its own, and that can often repair that function. But if you're going to use HCl capsules, you really want to know how to do that the right way. If you do it the wrong way, you might really magnify some digestive symptoms. So you want to check out our video on 9 Betaine HCl mistakes that you want to avoid before you start supplementing with any kind of HCl. And just keep in mind that I'm not a doctor. I'm not giving anybody medical advice. If your doctor is telling you to use these proton pump inhibitors, that doesn't mean that I'm telling you not to, just because I'm sharing studies that show the problems that they can create. Remember, I'm just a professional stand-up comic turned nutrition author, because when I lost my voice for 8 years and 23 different doctors couldn't figure that out, I had to dig for my own answers. So now for 20 years, I've been teaching health professionals in more than 40 countries how to help their clients fix the actual underlying causes of problems instead of just covering up the symptoms. But we'll have all of these studies below so you can dig through those to figure out the right questions to ask your doctor. And another supplement that can be beneficial is creatine. This is very popular in the workout world with all the gym bros, but there's a lot of studies showing that this has a lot of other benefits beyond just muscle building. But when somebody's really losing muscle, this can be beneficial if a person is also doing some type of resistance training. And if you're older than Jed Clampett, don't feel like you need to throw around all these big weights and do all this kind of weight training. And if you know who Jed Clampett is, odds are pretty good that you might be older than Jed Clampett. But we want to do some type of resistance training that is appropriate for our age. As we get older, resistance might just be body weight, or even, exercise bands, or something that would be a little bit easier, but it's still providing that resistance. So do something that's appropriate for your age without hurting yourself, but allowing your body to at least trigger that rebuilding and repair state. Another supplement is HMB. And this study here on effects of exercise with HMB and muscle mass talked about how it could be beneficial, but it doesn't really seem to work for everybody. And the reason that is because this HMB is a pro-anabolic supplement. It's helping move the body into that anabolic state where it's good at rebuilding and repairing. But if that's not the problem for somebody, that's not really going to help them. If their problem is that they can't break down protein into amino acids, then moving into that anabolic state isn't really going to do anything for them. So instead of just looking at the studies and what worked for the most amount of people, we want to look at our body chemistry to learn how to understand what's really going on for us. So that video on understanding a catabolic imbalance will kind of talk a little bit about how to do that at home to get an idea. Am I leaning too far on that catabolic side? And if I am, then this HMB may really be beneficial for me. So I hope that helps you understand how this can come about and why the most standard suggestions aren't really going to work for everybody if they have these other issues going on. And if you want to learn more about how to improve digestive issues, you can jump over right now and check out our video on full digestive reset. And if you want to understand that catabolic imbalance more, you can jump over and check out that video on understanding a catabolic imbalance. I can't wait to hear about your results.